Good evening, this is BrassTacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. There's been a big fillip for the Enforcement Directorate today by the Supreme Court. The court has held that the power given to the Enforcement Directorate to make arrests, conduct search and seizures, and attach property are constitutionally valid. The judges also said that challenges to the ED's power of arrest are unfounded because requisite safeguards are already in place. And all of this comes even as the opposition has been alleging that the NDA government, the Modi Sarkar, has been using agencies like the ED, CBI, IT, etc. as instruments of harassment, instruments to harass the opposition. Will the Supreme Court, no less, now upholding the powers of the Enforcement Directorate, will the criticism from the opposition end? But before that, the story of the day so far.
While the Congress continued to protest against the questioning of party President Sonia Gandhi by the Enforcement Directorate over alleged money laundering in the National Herald case, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutional validity of the stringent provisions of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. The Supreme Court bench held that the power given to the Enforcement Directorate for making arrests, conducting searches and seizures, and attaching proceeds of crimes are constitutionally valid. The judges said that challenges to the ED's power of arrest are unfounded because requisite safeguards exist. The bench noted that the Enforcement Directorate is not police and therefore statements recorded by them during inquiry are valid evidence. The court also specified that it is not mandatory for Enforcement Directorate officers to disclose the grounds of arrest at the time of detaining an accused, and that it is not necessary to give the ECIR or copy of complaint to the accused because it is an internal document of the Enforcement Directorate. The top court said that the twin provisions for bail under the PMLA are legal and not arbitrary. Minutes after the verdict, BJP President JP Nadda took a swipe at the Congress.
ये न देश के लिए है आवश्यक न ही पार्टी के लिए। ये एक परिवार को बचाने की एक कुत्सित प्रयास है। यह परिवार अपने आप को देश से ऊपर, कानून से ऊपर समझता है। It has been upheld by Supreme Court and we should respect the Constitution, we should respect the law, and we should respect the law of the land.
The Congress in turn accused the centre of misusing investigating agencies.
Misuse of PMLA is concerned. I don't think the Supreme Court has said or could have said that you can continue misusing PMLA.
Petitioners like Congress MP Karti Chidambaram and former Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti had argued that unchecked power to arrest the accused without informing them of the grounds of arrest or evidence is unconstitutional. But with the Supreme Court drawing the line, has the bid to save money laundering accused failed?
All right, on the talking point this evening, Tom Vadakan, spokesperson of the BJP, Dr. Ajay Kumar, spokesperson of the Congress Party, Smita Prakash, editor ANI, Dharmesh K. Tanai is a lawyer, and Shantanu Guha Ray is Asia editor of the Central European News. Let me start with you, Tom. First things first, the Supreme Court bench today has said that the power given to the Enforcement Directorate for making arrests, conducting searches and seizures, and attaching proceeds of crime are constitutionally valid. Now, all of these three cases is what the opposition is saying. The powers that have been given to the Enforcement Directorate via an amendment that your government passed in 2019 were malafide, were extra-constitutional. The court seems to have denied that or rejected that.
Well, Zaka, that is the reality today. In fact, the Congress Party is in a denial mode. The reality is staring at them. Now, the petitioners are, many of them are the accused. And naturally, they will question it. And the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, and which we all accept, has said what it has said. And the question of arrest and the comparison with CRPC and the FIR and the what you call the EPICR, I think that's what they call it. Yeah, that has been compared, and it is not necessary for the accused to be given that because it's a confidential document with input. So this whole argument of where is the FIR? I heard Chidambaram shouting. I heard many panelists, where is the FIR? Now, these are answers that they have got from the Supreme Court. This is not the BJP speaking. This is the highest court of the land speaking. So I think our friends will rest assured. And the profits, I cannot even calculate the profits because right now while I'm speaking, the counting machines are working in Bengal, finding out what are the much more cash that has come in. So to make a judgment of how much money has come through and the laundering aspect that is going on for some time. And I salute the Prime Minister of this country because he talked about his issue of bringing black money back. And here is the process that has started. And there are complaints, naturally. Everybody is complaining. Anybody with black money and laundering business will complain. But yes, our Prime Minister is steadfast in what he said and is following it up.
Oh, I want to ask Dr. Ajay Kumar, as a Congress spokesperson, as a former police officer, this is what the court said today, that the challenges to the ED's power of arrest are unfounded because requisite safeguards against the misuse of the power of arrest exist. And most importantly, the court also said it is not mandatory for ED officers to disclose the grounds of arrest at the time of an accused being detained. This is something that leaders like your Mr. P. Chidambaram were asking, what are the grounds for which people are being detained. Today, the court has said that the ED does not need to reveal at the time of detention on what grounds people are being arrested.
So, Zaka, a couple of things before. I really appreciate Tom saying that we respect the Supreme Court, because when Nupur Sharma's comments came by the judge of the Supreme Court, then the Bharatiya Janata Party seemed to be grievously wounded and offended. And so it is very convenient when a judgment comes, so-called. And the other issue is, much as the BJP would like to jump around, my biggest fear is, one is that the Supreme Court has said that whether it was to be passed as a money bill, was that a right, and it's a matter of a larger bench to decide. But for people like Tom and all of us in politics, when we think that the chips are on our side, day after tomorrow they will be out of power, the most dangerous thing is to use organization like ED to score political points. I mean, you might be very happy today saying corruption. 100 crores of BJP MLAs in Maharashtra is not a corruption for the ED. The vice president of BJP in Meghalaya running a brothel is not a question. Some of these magical remedy, pharmaceutical, natural therapy companies having 10,000 crores suddenly is not an ED issue. So the question again is, if the ED is only targeting the opposition, and Tom should answer me that, that suddenly the BJP DNA is changed, is so good that all the targets are only the opposition. There has been, I believe there has been 30 times increase in cases in terms of the past few years and in terms of the ED. But the issue is, what is scary, and let Tom and every BJP or Congress or TMC, everybody be aware that when you stand on the sideline cheering, thinking you're there, when tomorrow you're out of power, the same thing is going to bite you back.
But Dr. Ajay Kumar, when did the Supreme Court call the CBI a caged parrot? When did the moniker Congress Bureau of Investigation come into usage? It was not when the BJP was in power.
And so, and so again, two rights don't make wrong. So Zaka, look, question again is, fundamental issue is, my crime is worse than yours and vice versa, which is taking us down the line. Was it wrong at that time to misuse CBI? Yes. Was it is wrong to misuse ED and CBI now? That's also is wrong.
Okay.
And it's a fact, it's an evolution. So I'm not good. Well, no, and let me finish one thing. I'll just finish with one important, very fundamental question. On the, they say that the Gandhis are not separate. They think they are not accountable. What is more accountable? You've gone for 50 hours of questioning. And it is remarkable that the ED has actually speaking, and I was listening to some lawyer who was a neutral person saying, the questions are 5 or 6. Okay? It takes 1 hour, 2 hours. The fact is that you're doing a 50-hour or a 20-hour questioning is you want to humiliate, go ahead and do it. But for Tom and all political people, tomorrow when you're out of power, when somebody else bites you back, so don't be very cheerful on things which happen, because I fundamentally believe the misuse of CBI earlier was wrong.
If you believe rightly or wrongly, you're in opposition, you have every right to believe that agencies are being misused and your leaders are being selectively targeted. The BJP's claim is that you don't hit the streets. You don't hit the streets when Mr. Kharge is questioned in the same case. You don't hit the streets when Mr. Bansal is questioned in the same case. They are also your leaders. You only hit the streets when a Gandhi is questioned. But anyway, that's your prerogative. No. I want to ask Smita Prakash. No, one second. No, one second. Can you give me? No. Come on, Dr. Kumar. Let me go to the others. I'll come back to you. You know me. I'll come back to you. Let me go to Smita Prakash. I think on a day when the Supreme Court has upheld the validity of some of the provisions of PMLA, it is also worth pondering on the record of the Enforcement Directorate itself. Just yesterday in Parliament, the MOS Finance Pankaj Chaudhary gave out these figures that in the last 8 years, the number of raids undertaken by the Enforcement Directorate is 3,000. The value of property which has been attached as proceeds of crime, quote unquote, is 99,000 crores. In the 8 years between 2005-6 and 2013, there were only 112 raids, and the value of property attached was 5,000 crores. This is the point that the opposition is making, that it has gone manifold simply to use the agency as an instrument of harassing the opposition.
True. See, who brought about the changes in the PMLA giving more powers to the ED? Sitting outside the realm, I'm not even going to mention which party because I think everybody is smart enough to know which party. Now, sitting outside the realm of these political parties, it's amusing to see the two largest parties calling ED a tool. Each of them is, accusing the other, and we sitting outside know what happened. As far as what you were saying about the BJP, actually wearing this as a feather in its cap, the Treasury benches in Parliament are not going to get cowed down by the opposition charges that ED is being used as a tool by the BJP. In fact, they're wearing it as as a badge of honor, because they are saying that the raids and the confiscation of properties that are being conducted, they say that during the UPA tenure there was no confiscation of properties of the convicted people, even though PMLA existed even then, which means that they were laggards in enforcing a rule which they themselves brought about. So the BJP says it's part of their manifesto when they talked about black money, etc. So they are going about doing that. As far as the Supreme Court is concerned, it seems a little harsh to many people who are seeing this and saying that why did they uphold everything? Many of them thought that there'd be some kind of a watering down. If I may, be bold enough to second judge or to wonder what was behind this, but I would just say that when the Supreme Court equates money laundering with heinous crimes like terrorism, then it's quite natural that they will go beyond saying that it is going to damage just the social and economic fabric. It's going to uphold the stringent provisions in the PMLA because they feel that it's about high time, because the international gaze is on India, because the entire term hawala, the whole thing is if somebody goes about money laundering, what is the synonym for hawala? Synonym for money laundering is hawala. Where does the word hawala come from? It comes from India. So this dirty tag that India has about money laundering, that's the reason the Supreme Court is saying that we are not going to water it down, because the entire world's gaze is on us.
Okay. Now, I want to ask Shantanu Guha. I think the point that the opposition is making also is not just about, the record of the ED. We will get into the details of the stats of the ED's record over the last 17, 18 years of the PMLA. But more than that, what they're saying is, what about the cases that were there against, people who were there in other parties who then joined the BJP? Hemanta Biswa Sarma joins the BJP, cases against him go into the cold storage. Mukul Roy, Shubhendu Adhikari. It's almost like, the BJP is like a Behti Ganga, and you wash away all your crimes in that Behti Ganga. Is that a valid opposition argument or opposition
No,
attack?
not at all. No cases are closed. The cases may slow down. Now, what is this PMLA? It looked like an independent act. I mean, was this envisaged by Parliament? I really don't think so. I'm not very sure about it. But cases always happen, and cases remain in files, and they keep happening. Now, let's not forget that today Karthi Chidambaram is raving and ranting, and it was his father who kept on increasing the ambit of PMLA. Yeah. In 2002, there were only 5 offenses under PMLA till PC kept on increasing it. Now, probably he should have also realized that there is no government is there for life. And he should have realized that any unbridled power given to an executive eventually turns out to be perverse. What are we seeing here? What we are seeing here is basically the government is trying its level best to unearth illegal cash. It is not an easy task. Don't forget, in this country, the Hassan Ali case is still unresolved. So, tracking Hawala cash, tracking cash under PMLA is not easy. So, certain stringent measures have come in. Now, there has been 2 amendments, 2013, 2019.
Yeah.
Now, P and C, which is basically the C being the scheduled offense and P being the financial benefit out of it, are an integral part of this act. What is being done now is that you enter, seize, arrest, and then find out about P and C, and that the opposition is not liking. They are saying, tell me why I'm being arrested. I don't think the ED explains that. ED need not do that. If they start explaining it, time and again we have seen opposition people coming out on the streets and objecting to investigations.
No. My simple question is really, and I want to ask the lawyer on the panel, Mr. Tanai, if for various provisions of arrest under IPC or CRPC, an accused has rights of the accused under Article 22(1) of the Constitution, where he or she should be told at the time of arrest what grounds he or she is being arrested under. Today, the court, in the case of the PMLA, has said that it is not mandatory for ED officers to disclose the grounds of arrest at the time of detaining an accused. And more importantly, it has also gone on to say, it went on to say that it is not necessary to give the ECIR, which is the Enforcement Case Information Report, or the equivalent of an FIR, or a copy of the complaint to the accused, because it is an internal document of the ED.
Correct.
Why should this provision of law have a different standard as opposed to all the other laws in the CRPC and IPC?
Oh, well, the very first thing is the crimes are committed in utmost secrecy. And in this case, if we see, no criminal comes out here by its own self. It is the ED by its own mechanism that they find it out in the system that what is wrong or what is the offense which has been committed. So all the criminals who have committed or who have done the hera-pheri or who have done so, whatsoever the wrongs they have done it, ED has been investigating. And there is a complete chain which has to be find it out. The investigation gets effected subsequently. That is one of the basic reasons. During the investigation, it is not told. It is at that point of time when they are arrested, they are told the grounds, look, this is what we have find it out. And now you also can tell or you can explain these kind of entries or these kind of things which are there before the arrest. The power of arrest must be distinguished from the actual arrest. The power of arrest comes only when you find out some tangible evidence against the criminals. It is even in the ED, if they have some kind of investigation, they have a material, they investigate. After the investigation, when they find it out, yes,
no. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. Let me give you the latest example. The example of Mr. Partho Chatterjee, who used to be a minister in the TMC government, and one of his close associates. Both of them were arrested a few days ago. Now, of course, ED is well within its right to arrest Mr. Partho Chatterjee because they have interrogated him, they have found him non-cooperative, and they have arrested him. But subsequent to his arrest, the material that's coming out into the public domain, which is the seizure of the 20 crores of cash in this Arpita Mukherjee's house, or today, even as we speak right now, counting machines have been brought in from SBI to a house that was supposedly locked out, completely locked out, and there's cash that's been recovered from there. All of this is happening post-arrest. So my simple contention is, if for all provisions of IPC and CRPC this does not apply, how can this apply for PMLA? That all the evidence seems to be coming after arrest. So the opposition's contention is you arrest first and then the evidence comes out.
It is not essentially, even in the other cases of IPC also, when accused is called for interrogation on prima facie, and if he is not cooperating with the investigating authorities, the custodial interrogation can be taken even at that point of time. It is not merely that it's only at that point of time. No accused, no criminal will himself come out and will try to give the evidence in regard to his own self.
Yes.
It is always there. It is the investigating agencies we keep on finding. And till the time they have a tangible evidence, they call and they only interrogate and investigate. But if now, by any chance, the accused or who himself is feels guilty in himself, if he himself is not cooperating, in that event, the custodial interrogation becomes essential.
Okay.
Now, one thing more which I want to say is, this PMLA is enforced since last 20 years. Why hue and cry is being made now? Why it is being made now? Just because whenever some influential person comes out, it comes out to that yes, now the hue and cry has to be made. There was a Supreme Court has also said there was one line today that it is going to be a bitterness for the democracy. Democracy means what? Democracy is for the common man. If you really want some changes, if you really feel something was wrong out there this should have been there for the common man also.
Okay.
It never happens. In 20 years,
I think this common man point is a valid one, and I want to ask Dr. Ajay Kumar this. I'm just giving the example of the National Herald case, right? Now, you could argue either ways that political parties have the right to donate to whoever they want to, so on and so forth. My understanding of the law, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding of the law is, as per the Representation of People's Act, a political party cannot lend money to any enterprise, whether it is a commercial enterprise, not-for-profit enterprise, whatever it is, be that as it may. The rights of the common man, or the rights of, let's say, ordinary Congress supporters who donated money to this party, that money, 90 crores of it, was given as loan to AJL. Now, in the case of those ordinary people, supporters, workers who contributed to your party, where do their rights go? Because they were not lending you money or donating money to you so that you can lend money to a newspaper company?
So let me ask, I need to answer, so I'll answer your question, but first you need to hear me out. The previous speaker said that, the common man, so the common man was Subhendu Adhikari, the common man was Mukul Roy, and the common man was Himanta Biswa Sarma, who, according to Smita Prakash, the BJP is wearing a badge of honor. It should be because they were able to save their people who joined their party. My question is, what are we saying? We have suddenly become holier than thou. Then I would request you, what about the electoral bonds? Isn't that killing democracy? The worst thing which has happened to the Indian democracy is electoral bonds. Let's leave aside that. Let's leave aside about 100 crores MLAs giving in Bombay, FIR being registered, but no problem with ED. BJP, as long as BJP Changaisi, everything is okay. So my question is, sir, let us not pretend that this is for common man, for Indian nation. Misuse, I told CBI misuse during earlier regime, bad thing. It came to bite everybody else in power later on. Yes. It will come to bite the BJP later on. Yes. Is it good for democracy? No. And the other issue is that all these people who joined after making the biggest robbery in different states, Mukul Roy, Shubhendu Adhikari, Hemant Biswa Sarma, who you said was the biggest chore, is suddenly Ganga Jal mein dubki lagaya, ED ki bimari khatam.
Dr. Saab, answer my question. No.
So, no, one second.
Answer my question.
One second. Okay, now your question is. The question is, this not-for-profit company is still registered? If there was any wrongdoing, the BJP didn't cancel for past 8 years, they've not cancelled the not-for-profit, Young Indian not-for-profit registration. Second issue, they said 2,000 crores and all this nonsense. Income tax return of AJL, his evaluation of the property at 300 crores. So I'm just saying, here is a country where people come on TV and spew lies after lies. And my question is whether it's ED for us or ED for them. And if you think ED is so good, then 0.5% conviction rate, sir. That means you can't prove 99.5%. And you come on TV and make all allegations. My question is, if you are so of such integrity and love for the country, 0.5%.
That's a fair question. I'll ask Tom that. I'll ask Tom that.
Please ask Shubhendu Adhikari, Himanta Biswa Sarma.
I asked those questions. I asked that question. One of my previous questions was that.
Ask them.
Let me ask Tom Vadakan,
exactly.
the record of the Enforcement Directorate, Tom Vadakan, this is what the opposition has also been pointing out. For example, in the year 2021-22, the Enforcement Directorate has registered 1,180 prosecution complaints. 5 years ago, it was only 148. So the increase has been almost 10 times, and yet the convictions, only 23 convictions have happened in 17 years of the existence of the PMLA. That is a conviction rate of 0.5%. Please defend this.
Zaka, there's no defense necessary here. Look at the timeline. The Gandhis are on bail. And from when? This is not a case that started off with the Modi government. This was a case that was there earlier. So when PMLA came into existence, your timeline is based on the total figure. The aggregate is not to be taken at this juncture. We have gotten to work, the work in progress. Now this whole issue about Dr. Ajay saying, what about Mr. Adhikari? I can tell you that. Work in progress. No claim. I think one of the panelists did mention this. No case is closed.
No, sir.
Okay, Dr.
Tom.
It is not.
Tom.
It is not like what
Tom,
you said about
Tom,
the vice
don't
president.
insult my intelligence
The
on national
philosophy-
TV. Tom,
The
don't
philosophy-
insult my intelligence,
the
please. Yeah.
The evil philosophy. You know, you talked about evil philosophy. I think this is the evil philosophy.
Evil
you're
philosophy
following.
of the BJP, I will
using
still
that
say
word
the
for
RSS
you.
evil,
This
evil,
is the philosophy.
hateful philosophy
I
of the
repeat,
BJP. I would still say that.
Dr. Ajay, I know you. You choose your word very correctly.
And some of you
I'm
cut my
repeating
video,
it to
which
you.
is pretty cool again. Good video editing.
We didn't cut
No,
anything.
video.
One second. Let's not go into past issues. I want to give the final word to Smita Prakash. And I think it comes back to the question that no matter whether the Supreme Court says or whoever says, the opposition is fixated on this narrative now. And it's not just the Congress. The TMC is saying this. The DMK is saying this. The Shiv Sena was saying this. That all opposition parties are fixated on this narrative that the NDA government, the Modi Sarkar, is out to get them by using agencies like ED, IT, CBI, etc. In the case of CBI, at least, for whatever it's worth, there is the outward pretension that it is an independent agency. In the case of ED, ED is directly responsible and comes under the Ministry of Finance. ED is now doing the majority of so-called quote-unquote criminal investigation in this country, particularly when it comes to opposition parties.
Yeah. Zaka, I think you're right, because it's a signal to to most of us as to which way the political spectrum is heading in the coming years. Because the entire ED, all these cases, the process is the punishment in most cases, and now the court has also got in, and getting bail is going to be extremely difficult. So political parties will be hard pressed to retain the accused in the party. It's not enough just talking about conviction and all, even the accused, because of the optics of it. So the parties which are other than the Congress, it's clear, in the Congress, it's clear that the Gandhis will now never let go of the stewardship of this party, because they need this mobilization. The visuals that you're running while I'm speaking, they need the cadres to come out and speak about and put pressure on the ED. Whether the ED gets pressurized, the courts get pressurized, that's a different matter. But now it is clear. Sonia Gandhi appearing for so many days, Rahul Gandhi being questioned for 30 odd hours. So the Congress is not going to change. Now the smaller parties, whether it's the TMC, if it's the not the top rung leaders, the second rung, third rung, they will probably be axed and let go. But if it is going to be like, for example, if it's NC, then if Farooq Abdullah, then obviously the cadres will not let go of him. So, the political spectrum is going to witness some major churning because of these ED cases.
Okay, we'll leave it at that for the moment. I want to thank all our guests, Tom Vadakan, Dr. Ajay Kumar, Smita Prakash, Shantanu Guare, and the lawyer, Mr. Tanai, for joining us here on the first debate. But meanwhile, the other big story that we are tracking, of course, Dakshin Kannada in Karnataka is tense after a BJP youth wing worker was hacked to death. His family, Praveen's family, claims that he was killed just days after he put up a Facebook post criticizing the killing of Kanhaiya Lal. The police, for now at least, are ruling out that the Facebook post was the reason, or this was a retaliatory killing for what he posted on Facebook. They are looking at a rivalry that happened on the ground, where a few days ago a Muslim youth from Kerala was killed. And in fact, even in this case, the police say that they have reason to believe that the accused persons came in a bike from Kerala, did the hacking of Praveen, and then went back to Kerala. Karnataka police teams are in Kerala right now, even as we speak. But first, the story.
Massive BJP Yuva Morcha protests earlier today as the mortal remains of the BJYM worker hacked to death in the state's Dakshin Kannada district late Tuesday evening are taken for last rites. Praveen Netaru, known to be active in social and political circles, had left his poultry shop in Bellary village around 9 p.m. yesterday when unidentified men on a motorcycle attacked him with lethal weapons. He was brutally hacked to death. Tensions peaked in the area with the state BJP president's car being heralded.
It looks that it was a very pre-planned attempt, and such similarities were there in other cases. So we're studying the whole thing into entirety, and then we'll go to the roots of it.
A distinct hate crime angle emerges. A social media post suggests Praveen Netaru was targeted as he slammed beheading calls. Locals also suggest the killing was retaliation for the murder of a Muslim youth in the area a few months ago. Several right-wing groups have accused the PFI and SDPI.
Initially, report जो आ रहा है केरल का जो SDPI और PFI का लिंक है, ऐसे मैसेज मीडिया में वगैरह आ रहा है, मीडिया और सोशल मीडिया में. पुलिस इन्वेस्टिगेट कर रहा है. हमारे सरकार उधर जो है सख्त कार्रवाई करेगी और जो कल्प्रिट्स है they will be brought to book.
The VHP has called a band in 3 taluks. Additional forces were rushed in from Mangaluru and Udupi. 6 police teams have been sent to Kerala and Madikeri and Hassan in Karnataka.
This is unfortunate. The incident took place when the innocent youth was closing his shop and going home. Such incidents have been happening on the coastal side for many years. Police have already started investigation, have requested police to ensure law and order is maintained. Anything might be the reason, but such incidents must not occur.
The Dakshin Kannada region has long been intensely sensitive communally. The latest murder says dousing long-simmering sparks will be a huge challenge ahead.
Across to Aishwarya Mahadev, Congress spokesperson, Aditya Srinivasan, advocate, also joining us. Aishwarya, the family of Mr. Praveen is saying that they have reason to believe that the Facebook post that he put in support of Kanhaiya Lal is the reason why he was killed today. We had the Home Minister of Karnataka in the last hour saying that they suspect PFI and SDPI folks as being behind this murder. Is it a crime in this country to express an opinion, however reprehensible it may be, and then to get killed for it?
Good evening, Zaka. I think first and foremost, I want to express my deepest condolences and my strongest condemnation for this crime. And it is extremely unfortunate that a youngster in this country, especially my state, has been hacked to death. And I hope that the government takes the strongest action necessary, as my leadership already reiterated. But Zaka, 2 things. First and foremost, I think this is a very, very strong law and order failure, situation of law and order failure in this. And I think this abdication of responsibility of blaming somebody from another state and whatnot is also weak on the part of the Chief Minister, especially from a region where if you look at Dakshin Kannada, Uttar Kannada and Udupi, that their entire region is completely BJP save for 1 MLA, and this situation has arisen. Second, when you come down to, should such crimes arise because of somebody's expression of an opinion? Absolutely not. And I think this is the same thing I've reiterated on your show when it came down to even Kanhaiya Lal's the situation that happened there and how brutal and gory that it was. But however, I think the lack of strong action, whether it's from the government or the criminal justice system, has obviously created this situation of vigilante justice. And that is something everybody has to look at. But a little context into coastal Karnataka, Zaka, that you realize that this is the communal laboratory or the communal hotbed. And this us versus them narrative has been going on for so long that every day youth from across different faiths are sacrificed and become cannon fodder for some larger person's political ploy or political agenda. And that is the most unfortunate part of what is happening in these situations.
I want to ask Aditya Srinivasan, yes, it is a law and order issue, no doubt about it. And I think people's anger was reflected in the way in which the BJP state president's car, you can see those pictures. It was, the entire mob had descended on that car. They were shaking that car almost violently. So yes, people's anger there is understandable, and it is a failure of law and order, but it is also a hate crime, at least on the face of it. Yes, the police are saying that they're investigating whether the Facebook post had anything to do with it. or whether there was some kind of interpersonal rivalry that led to Praveen's unfortunate demise. The question is, we have seen this repeated pattern with other cases as well. We saw this with Kanhaiya Lal, we saw this with Umesh Kole in Maharashtra, and now we're seeing this with Praveen in coastal Karnataka. There needs to be stricter enforcement of the law, maybe even a stricter law, if you will, to enforce strict rules when it comes to hate crime. India cannot allow hate crime to go unchecked like this.
Zaka, I'll get into your question for just in just a second. I'm speaking as someone who is an advocate. I don't particularly care for the specifics of the politics. My biggest concern, my biggest issue is that our freedom of expression, not just as a constitutional value, but also in terms of how it's implemented as a law and order issue, has become such that you apply different standards for different sets of people. Now, I think that is the real problem, and that's what needs to be addressed, whether it is by the judiciary or whether it is to the introduction of as you say, a stricter law or any legislation which sort of tries to harmonize these standards. It cannot be the case that things said by certain persons belonging to certain communities or certain groups of people are considered to be reprehensible, whereas equivalent statements that are put out by persons or different persons belonging to different groups or different communities are not considered to be reprehensible. There needs to be, at least as far as something like this is concerned, that is the freedom of speech, there needs to be, in my opinion, an equal standard for all sets of people, for all groups of people.
No, so to that extent, I mean, to put it in layman terms, you can't say in one case freedom of speech suddenly becomes blasphemy and in the other case it's kosher, because you've got to apply the same standards. And I don't for one believe that in a constitutional democracy you should have place for things like blasphemy. I mean, we are ruled by IPC and by CRPC and by the Indian Constitution, not by some religious grunt. So the point, and I'm breaking this down into layman terms, is it has to be the same standard whether you are saying something against X god or Y god. The law of the land should apply equally, Aditya.
100%. I agree with you 100%, Zaka, and that's the standard that we ought to move to. It was my understanding that was the standard to begin with. It's just not clear to me how over the years of our constitutional democracy we seem to have drifted away from that standard.
Aishwarya Mahadev, when Kanhaiya Lal happened, when Umesh Kole happened, yes, there was outrage. People came out into the streets, they protested. But that story seems to have gone. I mean, the story seems to have gone with the news cycle. Until now, again, Praveen's murder, unfortunately, has come. And all of this is going back to one comment made by one spokesperson on one television channel, what was it, a month and a half, almost 2 months ago? And I'm not here, and viewers know me, they have watched my broadcast over the last 2 months. Every time the Nupur Sharma case came up, I have said that what she said was condemnable, was reprehensible, and she needs to face the law. But you cannot, for the love of God, use that one comment, and then already I've just recounted 3 people who've died, either as a direct fallout or as an indirect fallout to that comment.
Zaka, first and foremost, I believe that irrespective of freedom of speech and whatnot, you saw the sort of outrage that happened in the Nupur Sharma case. But the one statement I want to make is that in situations like this, you need to be tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime. Nupur is symptomatic of the larger situation of what has happened. But all I'm asking for is when you talk about this, and it's wonderful that you talk about how freedom of speech should not be bound by these limits that you do talk about. But the one singular fact here is that this sort of outrage and this sort of extra judicial justice or this vigilante justice occurs, that when you do not, as a justice system, take strict enough or strong enough action that acts as a deterrent against far more issues or situations like this arising. And in the coast, and I'm from Karnataka, I'm a Kannadiga, and in coastal Karnataka, I see it has become a retaliatory sport of these extremist factions of saying we took one down here, we took the other down again, and for their ideologies, you end up seeing the youngsters being sacrificed. And the larger problem, and I completely agree with Mr. Srinivasan when he talks about, I believe that there shouldn't be this sort of asymmetric sort of treatment or when statements like this are made. Absolutely agree. I think, however, that if you as a government are equidistant to all religions in the manner of your secularism or your manner of how you want to be inclusive enough to all, that you treat them all equally, that you do not start these, these fueled by political parties sort of agendas on both factions, anybody with a religious leaning, that you don't allow them to percolate and also perpetuate these ideas of, one is above the other, because that is not what secularism is, and that is what is killing people today in my state, Zaka, to be very honest.
Aditya, I mean, I'm just playing those pictures out because it was pretty dramatic that a very powerful politician from the ruling establishment in the state, his car was being geared, and people out there who were incensed by what happened to Praveen are shaking and pushing the car almost violently. People's outrage in this case, I guess, is understandable because they believe that they are all practitioners or people who follow this particular ideology, but the people who are in power, who are supposed to protect them and every common citizen, have let them down. That's the manifestation of that feeling has come out through this anger.
Correct, and I mean, whilst the outrage is understandable to the extent that it involves destruction of property and injury to persons, of course, it's not something that as reasonable people we can sit and
condone
and be okay with. Exactly. So there are outlets for outrage, and in a democracy that takes law and order seriously, that believes in the rule of law, we need to be consistent with our adherence to the rule of law across the board.
Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Aditya Srinivasan and Shwarya Mahadev, many thanks for joining us. We'll take a break here on BrassTacks. When we come back right on the other side, the latest in the Bengal SSC scam, where the Enforcement Directorate has reportedly recovered a huge amount of money at one of the houses of Arpita Mukherjee, a close aide of the arrested TMC Minister Partho Chatterjee. Details right on the other side.